Apologize or get out of my house." Those were the words my son screamed at me after his wife put on an entire spectacle of tears and humiliation right in front of me. It all began at their house. I had come over for a family dinner that Saturday evening. Rebecca was there, sitting on her extremely expensive sofa in her designer dress, and that false smile she always gives me when Robert is watching, a smile that vanishes the instant he turns his head. The dinner was uncomfortable, as always. Rebecca talked non-stop about her wealthy friends, about her trips, about the latest piece of jewelry Robert had bought her, a diamond necklace that cost $8,000. She mentioned it 3 times during the dinner. $8,000. As if she needed me to know exactly how much it was worth. As if she needed to rub it in my face that she had the money and the power in that relationship. I tried to eat in silence. I nodded when necessary. I smiled when appropriate. I did everything possible not to give any reason for conflict, but with Rebecca, it's never enough. She always finds a way to make me the problem. "Mary, you passed the salt without me asking for it." Her voice came out sharp, offended, as if I had committed an unforgivable crime. I had seen her reaching for the salt shaker and simply moved it closer to her. A normal gesture, a gesture of courtesy that anyone would make at a table. But for Rebecca, it was the perfect excuse. "I'm sorry, I just meant to help," I said calmly, with that infinite patience I've developed in these 3 years of enduring her disrespect. But she was already staging her drama. "You always do that. You always interfere. You always stick your nose into everything. I can't even have a peaceful dinner without you hovering over me, controlling me." Her voice rose in volume, her eyes filled with fake tears. Tears that sprang forth in a second, as if she had them stored up, waiting for the perfect moment to use them. Robert put his silverware down on his plate. The sound of metal against china echoed in the silence that formed. I saw him turn toward me with an expression I had never seen before, pure hardness, as if I were a stranger who had just insulted his wife in their own house. "Rebecca, my love, what happened?" His voice was soft when he addressed her, protective, full of concern, the same tone he used with me when he was a kid and someone bothered him at school. But now that tone was for her, and for me, only contempt remained. "Your mother constantly disrespects me. I can't take it anymore, Robert. I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when she always makes me feel like I'm not good enough for you." Rebecca brought her napkin to her eyes. She was sobbing. She was trembling, a performance worthy of an award. And my son was buying it all. I remained paralyzed in my chair, with the fork still in my hand, watching the scene as if I were seeing a horror movie where I was the protagonist. I wanted to speak, I wanted to defend myself, but the words got caught in my throat, because I knew nothing I could say would matter. Robert had already chosen his side. "Mom, you need to go." Robert's voice came out dry, cutting, as if he were firing someone who worked for him for making a serious mistake. "I don't want you here tonight anymore." I stood up slowly. My legs were shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I picked up my purse from the chair. My hands moved on their own, as if my body knew it had to get out of there before something worse happened. "Robert, I just wanted to help. I didn't mean to bother Rebecca." My voice came out broken, small, as if I had shrunk into something insignificant. Something that no longer deserved to be in that house full of luxury and pretense, but he was already comforting his wife, hugging her, whispering things into her ear while she continued to cry against his chest. He didn't even look at me when I walked toward the door. He didn't even lift his head to see his mother leave with a broken heart. I reached the front door. I opened it. The cold night air hit my face, but before I could step outside, I heard his voice behind me, firm, final, like a sentence that allows no appeal. "Mom, this can't go on. Rebecca is right. You're always interfering. You always make her feel uncomfortable. I need you to come next Saturday and apologize to her in front of all our guests. We're going to have a dinner, and you're going to apologize properly, or else don't come back at all." I turned around to look at him. There was my son. The boy I raised alone after his father abandoned us. The boy I fed with the little I had. The boy I dressed in second-hand clothes so he could go to a good school. the boy I worked double shifts for years for. That boy was now a man who looked at me as if I were a problem he needed to solve. Apologize or get out of my house. Those words fell on me like stones, heavy, cold, immovable. Rebecca appeared behind him. She wasn't crying anymore. She had a small smile on her lips, almost imperceptible. But I saw it, that smile of victory, that smile that said she had won, that she had put me in my place, that she had turned me into what she always wanted me to be. Nothing. I nodded, not out of submission, not because I accepted their version of events. I nodded because at that moment I made a decision that would change everything. If they wanted me to apologize in front of their guests, I would do it. But not in the way they expected, not with my head bowed and the trembling voice of a mother desperate to regain her son's love. No, I was going to go to that dinner. I was going to stand in front of all their rich friends and their plastic faces, and I was going to say something that none of them expected to hear, something that would destroy the entire perfect facade Rebecca and Robert had built, something that would make them regret having treated me like this. It's fine, Robert. I'll come on Saturday. I'll apologize to Rebecca. I promise you. My voice came out calm, too calm, so calm that I saw a flicker of doubt in my son's eyes. But it was too late. He had already accepted. He had sealed his own fate. I walked out of that house with my back straight, without looking back, without crying, because the tears would come later, in the solitude of my apartment, in the darkness of my room, but not there, not in front of them. I wouldn't give them that pleasure. I walked down the empty street to the bus stop. The cold wind cut my face, but I barely felt it. My mind was already working, remembering, connecting the dots, gathering the pieces of a puzzle I had been ignoring for too long. Because I knew things. Things Rebecca thought no one else knew. Things I had seen, heard, kept silent. The bus arrived. I sat in the back. I looked out the window as the city blurred past, the lights, the buildings, people walking with their normal lives. And there I was, 67 years old, feeling that everything I had worked for was collapsing, but also feeling something new, something I hadn't felt in a long time, determination, because that Saturday wasn't going to be the day that Mary Smith knelt before a manipulative woman and her son blinded by money. That Saturday was going to be the day the truth came out, the day everyone saw who Rebecca Miller really was, the day my son discovered that the price of humiliating your mother is higher than he ever imagined. I arrived at my apartment. I closed the door. I stood in the darkness of the entryway, and for the first time in 3 years, I smiled. A small smile. Bitter, but real. Because now I had a purpose. Now I had a plan. And nothing and no one was going to stop me. There was a time when Robert and I were inseparable, a time when he sought me out to tell me everything, his joys, his fears, his dreams, a time when I was his favorite person in the whole world. I remember the day he was born. March 29th. It was raining so hard the streets looked like rivers. I was alone in the hospital. His father had left us 2 months earlier when he found out a baby was coming. He said he wasn't ready to be a dad, that he had other plans, that I would understand someday. I never understood. But I didn't need to, because when they put Robert in my arms and I saw him open those dark eyes, I knew he was all I needed in this life. The early years were tough. I worked in a laundry during the day and cleaned offices at night. I slept 4 hours, sometimes less, but every time I came home and saw my son smile at me from his crib, all the tiredness disappeared. All the pain was worth it, because I was building something. I was giving my son a chance to have a better life than mine. Robert was a bright kid. He learned to read before the other children in his class. He always brought home good grades. The teachers told me he was special, that he had a promising future, and I believed them. I worked longer hours. I saved every penny, all so he could go to a good college someday. When he was 8 years old, Robert won a math competition at his school. I remember him running home with the diploma in his hands. "Mom! Mom! I won! Look what I won!" His eyes shone with excitement, with pride. I hugged him so tight he laughed and told me I was crushing him, but I couldn't let go. I couldn't stop thinking that all the sacrifice was paying off. That night we ate his favorite food, spaghetti with meat sauce, nothing fancy, nothing expensive. But for us, it was a feast. We ate sitting on the living room floor because we still didn't have a table. We laughed. We talked about his dreams. He wanted to be an engineer. He wanted to build huge bridges that connected cities. He wanted to do important things, and I told him he would do it, that I would do everything I could to make it happen. And I did. I worked until my body begged for rest, and still I kept going. Every extra dollar went into a savings account for his education. Every weekend I could take an extra shift. I took it. It didn't matter how tired I was. It didn't matter how much my back hurt or how much my hands burned from all the washing and cleaning. Robert was my purpose, my reason for going on. When he reached his teens, our relationship grew even stronger. He told me about the girls he liked, about problems with his friends, about his insecurities. I was his confidant, his counselor, his safe harbor. Every night before bed, he would come to my room and we'd talk for hours about everything, about nothing, just enjoying each other's company. "Mom, you're the strongest person I know," he told me one night when he was 15 years old. He had just found out that one of his classmates had both parents and lived in a big house with a yard. I think he felt bad about our situation, about our small apartment, about the clothes I wore that were years old. But I took his hand and told him we didn't need more, that the two of us were enough, that love isn't measured in square feet or in new clothes. And he believed me. For many years, he believed me. We were a team, Mary and Robert against the world. That's what we called ourselves. That's how we felt. Invincible, united, unbreakable. He managed to get into college with a scholarship. I cried with happiness the day the acceptance letter arrived. I cried so much that Robert had to hug me and tell me that everything was fine, that we had done it, that his life was going to change. And it did. He studied civil engineering, just as he always dreamed. He graduated with honors. He got a job at a major firm. He made good money, very good, more money than we had seen put together in our entire lives. The first thing he did when he got his first paycheck was take me out to dinner at a fancy restaurant. "Mom, this is for everything you did for me." He ordered wine. He ordered an appetizer. He ordered dessert. He spent almost $200 that night. I felt uncomfortable with so much luxury. But he was so happy, so proud to be treating me, so grateful. He took my hand across the table and told me he would never forget everything I had sacrificed for him. I will never forget those words, because they were the last truly honest words he spoke to me, the last words before everything changed, before she showed up. During the first few years of his professional career, Robert would come to visit me every week. Sundays were ours. We ate together. We watched movies. We talked about his job, about his projects, about his future plans. He bought me a new refrigerator when the old one broke. He helped me pay the rent when I had a difficult month. He was attentive, affectionate, present. "Mom, when I have my own house, you're going to live with me." He promised me more than once. "You won't have to worry about anything ever again. I'm going to take care of you just like you took care of me." And I believed him. Of course I believed him. He was my son, my boy, the man I had trusted my whole life. But then she arrived, Rebecca Miller. He met her at a business conference, a woman from a wealthy family, with contacts, with influence, with all the money we never had. Robert introduced her to me 3 months after they started dating. He came to my apartment with her one Saturday afternoon. "Mom, I want you to meet someone very special." His voice sounded excited, nervous, like when he was a kid and brought something important to show me. I opened the door, and there she was. Rebecca, in her designer clothes, her expensive shoes, her perfume that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She looked at me with a polite smile, but her eyes evaluated me in a second. They measured me, they judged me, and they found me insufficient. "Nice to meet you, Mary." She didn't say Mrs. Smith. She didn't say mother-in-law, just Mary, as if we were friends the same age, as if she had the right to call me by my first name from the very first moment. She entered my apartment and looked around with that expression I now know so well. That expression that says everything without saying anything. That expression that screams, small, old, poor. I made coffee. I served cookies I had bought especially for the visit. I tried to make conversation, but Rebecca answered with monosyllables, with forced smiles, with glances at her watch, as if being in my house were a torture she had to endure only because Robert had asked her to. And Robert didn't notice, or he didn't want to notice. He was so fascinated with her, so charmed. He looked at her as if she were the most marvelous thing he had ever seen. And maybe for him, she was, because Rebecca represented everything he never had. Money, status, the entry into a world he had only seen from the outside before. After that visit, everything changed, slowly at first, so slowly that I almost didn't notice. Robert started canceling our Sundays. I have dinner with Rebecca's parents. I have a work event. I have to take Rebecca to something. There was always a reason. There was always something more important than spending time with me. The calls became less frequent, the visits more spaced out. And when he did come, he wasn't the same. He spoke differently. He dressed differently. Even the way he looked at me had changed, as if he was suddenly ashamed of where he came from, as if I were an uncomfortable reminder of a life he wanted to forget. But I kept waiting. I kept believing that it was just a phase, that when the novelty of the relationship wore off, my son would come back, that he would remember who was there when he had nothing, that he would remember who sacrificed everything so he could get where he got. How wrong I was. Rebecca entered my son's life like a silent storm. At first, everything seemed normal, even nice. Robert was in love, and I wanted to see him happy. That's what a mother does. She puts her son's happiness above her own doubts, above that inner voice that tells her something isn't right. The first few months after meeting her were confusing. Robert still visited me, but it wasn't the same. He came in a rush. He left early. He always had his phone in his hand. He was always waiting for a message from her. And when that message came, his face lit up in a way that hurt me. Because that light wasn't for me anymore. It wasn't because of being with me. It was because of her. One Sunday, he came with news. "Mom, Rebecca and I are getting married." He said it with a huge smile, with that childlike excitement he always had when something good happened to him. I should have jumped for joy. I should have hugged him. I should have told him I was happy for him. But something in my chest tightened. Something told me this wasn't going to end well. Even so, I smiled. Even so, I hugged him. Even so, I told him all the words a son expects to hear from his mother at a moment like that. Because that's what mothers do. We swallow our fears, we hide our doubts, and we support them, even if we're dying of worry inside. The wedding was elegant, too elegant. They got married in a ballroom that cost more than $30,000 for just one night. There were flowers everywhere, imported roses, orchids, arrangements so large they looked like sculptures. The food was from a renowned chef. The cake had 5 tiers. Everything was perfect. Everything was excessive. Everything belonged to Rebecca's world. I felt out of place from the moment I walked in. My dress was simple. Pretty, but simple. I had bought it at a discount store because I couldn't spend $500 on a dress like the other guests. I did my own hair. My shoes were 2 years old. And as I walked among all those elegant people, I felt every look, every silent judgment, every thought that said, she doesn't belong here. Rebecca's family greeted me with cold courtesy. Her mother shook my hand as if touching something dirty. Her father didn't even look me in the eye. Her siblings ignored me after the obligatory greeting. I was the groom's mother, but to them, I was invisible. Worse than invisible. I was an uncomfortable reminder that Robert came from humble beginnings, that he hadn't always had money or an important last name. During the ceremony, I sat in the front row, alone, because I had no one else. My family is small. My friends couldn't afford to come to a wedding like that. So there I was, watching my son marry a woman I barely knew, watching him look at her as if she were his entire universe, and feeling that I was becoming nothing. At the reception, they seated me at a table in the back, far from the head table where the bride and groom were, far from Rebecca's family, who occupied the best tables. I shared a table with people who also didn't know anyone, distant cousins of someone, friends of friends, all just as lost as I was in that sea of luxury and pretense. Robert came to greet me during the dance. "Mom, you look beautiful." He lied. I knew it wasn't true, but I was grateful for the lie because it at least meant he still cared about my feelings. We danced one song. He led me onto the floor, and I tried not to cry. I tried not to think that this was the beginning of the end, that after today, my son would no longer be only mine. He wouldn't need me as much as before. "Thank you for everything, Mom, for giving me the life you gave me, for preparing me for this moment." He whispered in my ear as we danced, and I nodded because I couldn't speak, because if I opened my mouth, I would cry. I would beg him not to forget me, not to let her change him, to remember where he came from. But I didn't say anything. I just danced with my son. I just enjoyed those 3 minutes that would probably be the last time he saw me as someone important in his life. After the wedding, everything accelerated. Robert and Rebecca moved in together in a house she bought, a huge house in a wealthy neighborhood where every property was worth more than $500,000. I went to visit them a week after they returned from their honeymoon. I brought a gift, a simple but pretty dinner set. It was what I could afford, what my budget allowed. Rebecca opened the gift in front of me. She looked at the plates. She turned them over to see the brand, and then she smiled. That smile I was beginning to recognize. That smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How nice, Mary. Thank you. Although we already have china, but we can use this when we have something casual, something simple." She left the box on the table as if it were trash that needed to be thrown away later. Robert didn't say anything. He didn't defend my gift. He didn't tell his wife to be kinder. He just looked away, uncomfortable, embarrassed, and I understood at that moment that I could no longer count on him, that she already had more power over him than I did. The following months were a process of slow disappearance. Every time I called, Robert was busy. Every time I suggested visiting them, there was a commitment, a dinner, a trip, a meeting, always something that was more important than seeing his mother. And when they finally invited me, Rebecca was there, controlling the conversation, interrupting when I spoke, correcting things I said. "Robert, your mom said you put the tomatoes in first, but actually you put them in at the end." Small corrections, small humiliations, designed to make me feel foolish, to make me feel like I didn't know anything, that she knew more, that she was better. And the worst part is that Robert let it happen. He laughed, he nodded, he agreed with her. His mother who raised him, his mother who sacrificed everything for him, his mother who worked until she broke so he could have an education. That mother was now less important than his rich wife's opinion. One day, I visited them without calling ahead. It was a mistake. I knew it the moment Rebecca opened the door and I saw her face. Pure annoyance, almost disgust. "Mary, we didn't know you were coming." She didn't say come in. She didn't say what a surprise. She just left me standing there at the door as if I were a pushy salesperson who had called at a bad time. "I just wanted to see Robert. I haven't seen him in 3 weeks. My voice came out small, pleading. I hated how it sounded. I hated having become someone who had to beg to see her own son. "He's working. He has an important video call meeting. He can't be interrupted." Rebecca was already closing the door. I put my foot down to stop her. A desperate gesture, a pathetic gesture. But I needed to see my son. I needed to hear his voice. I needed to feel that I still mattered to someone. "Just for a moment, please," I said, almost begging. And she sighed. That long sigh that says you're annoying. That sigh that makes you feel like you're a burden, a problem, something that has to be tolerated. "Wait here." She didn't let me in. She made me stay on the porch as if I were a stranger, as if after carrying Robert in my womb for 9 months, after raising him alone for 25 years, I didn't have the right to enter their house. I waited 15 minutes, standing there, feeling the neighbors pass by and look at me, an elderly woman standing on an elegant porch as if she were begging for charity. That's what I must have looked like. That's what they made me feel I was. Finally, Robert came out. He had his phone in his hand. His face was tense. "Mom, you can't just come over like this without calling first. I'm working." He didn't even hug me. He didn't even smile. He just scolded me as if I were a child who had done something wrong. "I just wanted to see you, my love. We haven't talked in so long." I tried to touch his arm, but he moved away. A small movement, almost imperceptible, but I felt it like a blow. "I'll call you later, Mom. I can't right now." And he closed the door. No kiss, no hug, nothing. He just closed the door and left me there, standing, feeling that I had just lost my son forever. I walked to the bus stop with tears in my eyes. I cried all the way home. I cried on the crowded bus full of people pretending not to see me. I cried in my empty apartment. I cried until I had no more tears left. And then I realized something. Rebecca hadn't just married my son. She had conquered him. She had changed him. She had turned him into someone I no longer recognized, someone capable of shutting the door in his own mother's face. The months that followed were the most difficult of my life, worse even than when Robert's father abandoned us, worse than the nights working without sleep, worse than the years of poverty and sacrifice, because this time the pain came from my own son, and that pain is beyond comparison. I tried to talk to him. I tried to make him see what was happening. I would call, and he was always in a hurry. "Mom, I'm in a meeting. Mom, I'm going out to dinner. Mom, Rebecca is waiting for me." Always an excuse, always something more important than listening to his mother. One afternoon, I finally managed to get him to come to my apartment. I told him I needed to talk to him about something important. He arrived, but he had that look of annoyance, that expression that says, "I have better things to do, but I came because it's my obligation." He sat on the edge of the sofa. He didn't even take off his jacket, ready to leave at any moment. "Robert, I feel like I'm losing you." I was direct, without beating around the bush, because I didn't have time to be careful anymore. "I barely see you anymore. We barely talk anymore. And when we are together, I feel like you're not really with me, that your head is somewhere else, with her." His face changed. It became hard, defensive. "Mom, don't start. Rebecca has nothing to do with this." His voice was irritated, as if I had said something offensive, as if mentioning his wife were a crime. "I didn't say she's to blame. I'm just saying that since you got married, everything has changed. You changed." I tried to stay calm. I tried not to sound accusing, but it was difficult, because every word I said was true and he knew it. "I grew up, Mom. That's what happens. People grow up. People change. I can't be your little boy all my life. I have a wife now. I have responsibilities. I have a life." His words were like blows, each one designed to hurt me, to make me feel like I was the problem, that I was the one who didn't understand. "I'm not asking you to be my little boy. I'm just asking you to include me in your life, not to treat me like a stranger, as if I weren't the person who gave everything for you." My voice broke. I hated showing him weakness, but I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't pretend everything was fine anymore. "You're so dramatic, always exaggerating everything. Rebecca is right. You're too intense, too demanding." He stood up. He was leaving. He had decided this conversation was over, and I couldn't do anything to stop him. "Rebecca said that about me?" It wasn't a question. It was a confirmation. A confirmation that she spoke badly of me, that she was filling him with venom against his own mother, and he allowed it. Worse still, he believed her. Robert didn't answer. He just looked at me with those eyes I no longer recognized, those eyes where there used to be love, and now there was only discomfort, annoyance. "I need to go, Mom. Rebecca is waiting for me so we can go out to dinner with her parents." And he left, leaving me there with a broken heart and 1,000 unanswered questions. After that conversation, I stopped insisting. I stopped calling him so much. I stopped suggesting plans, because each rejection hurt more than the last. Each excuse was like a door closing, and I was tired of hitting my head against closed doors. But the silence was worse, not knowing about him, not hearing his voice, watching the weeks pass without a call, without a message, without anything. It was like watching him die slowly, like losing him little by little and not being able to do anything to stop it. One night, I dared to write him a message, simple, direct. "Robert, I miss you. Can we see each other?" I sent it and stared at the phone, waiting for his reply. An hour passed. 2 hours. 3 hours. Nothing. He read it and didn't reply. My own son ignored me as if I didn't exist. 2 days later, he finally responded. "Sorry, Mom, I've been busy. Maybe next month we can meet." Next month. As if I were a dentist appointment that could be rescheduled. As if seeing me were an annoying obligation that had to be fulfilled eventually, but without haste. I tried to fill my time with other things. I started going to church more often. I made friends with Rose Johnson, a woman my age who was also alone. She understood. She also had children who had drifted away, who visited her once a year if she was lucky. We got together for coffee, to talk about our lives, about our pain. It was a small comfort, but comfort nonetheless. But nothing filled the void Robert had left. Nothing healed the pain of knowing that the son I gave everything for now treated me as if I were a nuisance in his perfect life. The months passed, and the visits became rarer and rarer. When they finally invited me to their house, everything was uncomfortable. Rebecca treated me with that fake kindness that is worse than direct mistreatment. She offered me coffee in expensive mugs. She asked me how I was in a sweet voice but with empty eyes, and I played the game. I smiled. I said everything was fine. I pretended not to notice her subtle digs, her poisoned comments disguised as concern. "Mary, you look tired. Are you sleeping well? You should take better care of yourself at your age," she would say while serving me tea in fine china, as if she cared, as if she was genuinely worried about my well-being. But I saw the truth in her eyes. She just wanted me to look bad, to feel bad, to know that I didn't belong in her world. And Robert sat there, quiet, letting it happen. Sometimes he even chuckled when she said something especially hurtful, like when she mentioned that I should update my wardrobe because the clothes I wore were so old-fashioned. He laughed. My own son laughed at his mother's clothes, the same mother who wore old clothes for years so he could have a new uniform for school. Rebecca started comparing us, subtly at first. "My mother traveled to Europe last month. It was wonderful. Have you traveled, Mary?" She knew perfectly well that I had never left the country, that I barely had enough money to pay my rent, but she needed to rub it in. She needed me to know that she came from a better world, that her family was superior, that I was less. One day, I arrived at their house and found that all the photographs had been changed. Before, there were a few pictures of Robert as a child, photos I had given them, photos of the two of us, of our life together. But now, there were only pictures of the two of them, of their wedding, of their trips, of their perfect life where I didn't exist. They had erased my history with my son. They had erased our past, as if those years had never existed. "Where are the photos that were here?" I asked, trying to sound casual, trying not to show that I was dying inside. "Oh, those. We put them away. Rebecca renovated the decor. Now everything is more modern, more elegant." Robert didn't even look at me when he said it. He was checking his phone, as if this were an unimportant conversation, as if he hadn't just told me he had stored away all the evidence that I had once been important in his life. Every visit was a new humiliation, every encounter a new way to make me feel small, insignificant, invisible. And the worst part is that Robert didn't just allow it, he participated. He had become an accomplice to his own wife in the task of destroying his mother. The invitations became even more sporadic, and when they did arrive, they always came with conditions. "Come to dinner, Mom, but not too late because we have plans later. Come on Sunday, but only for 2 hours because we're going out. Come, but don't bring food because Rebecca has already cooked. Come, but don't talk about certain topics because they make Rebecca uncomfortable. Come, but basically don't be yourself. Don't exist. Just appear and disappear without a trace." I tried to talk to Robert one more time, by phone because he wouldn't even see me in person anymore. "Robert, I know Rebecca doesn't want me around, and I understand that she's your wife and she's your priority now, but I am your mother. That doesn't change. That should never change. Mom, that's enough. You're obsessed. Rebecca has nothing against you. You're the one who's always looking for problems, the one who always makes drama." His voice sounded tired, fed up, as if I were a spoiled child who didn't understand reason, as if all this were a product of my imagination, of my need to create conflicts where there were none. I'm not looking for problems. I just want you to treat me like your mother, to include me in your life, not to make me feel like I'm a bother. The tears began to fall. My voice trembled. I no longer cared about sounding desperate. I was desperate. I can't keep having this conversation. It's always the same with you. Always the victim. Always suffering. You need to grow up, Mom. You need to understand that you are no longer the center of my world. And he hung up. My son hung up the phone while I was crying, while I was begging him for a little love, for a little consideration. I stayed sitting in my living room, with the phone in my hand, feeling that I had just lost the last battle, that there was nothing more to do, that my son was gone, that the boy I raised with so much love had become a stranger, someone capable of hurting me without remorse, without guilt, without anything. The truth came to me in the most unexpected way. One Tuesday afternoon, I had gone to the bank to cash my pension check when I saw Rebecca leaving an elegant downtown coffee shop. She wasn't alone. She was with a man, young, well-dressed, and the way they were talking wasn't the way you talk to a friend. It was intimate, complicit, suspicious. I hid behind a post. I didn't want her to see me. I didn't want to have to greet her and pretend everything was fine. But I also couldn't stop looking. There was something about that scene that unnerved me, something that told me I should pay attention. The man handed her a folder. Rebecca opened it. She checked some papers. She nodded, and then she took an envelope from her purse and gave it to him. It was quick, discreet. But I saw it. I saw the exchange. I saw how she looked around before doing it, as if she didn't want anyone to see her. And then I knew something wasn't right, that whatever was going on there wasn't legal, or at least it wasn't honest. I stood there for several minutes after they both left, trying to process what I had seen, trying to find an innocent explanation. Maybe it was a lawyer. Maybe they were work papers. Maybe I was seeing things where there were none because I was already prejudiced against her. But something inside me told me no, that this was important, that I had to investigate, that I had finally found a clue to who Rebecca Miller really was. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept turning over what I had seen in my mind, the envelope, the folder, the way Rebecca nervously looked around. And then I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to find out what she was hiding. I was going to find the truth, even if it hurt, even if it destroyed the little that was left of my relationship with Robert. I called Rose the next day. "Rose, I need your help." I told her what I had seen. She listened in silence, and when I finished, she sighed. "Mary, be careful. Getting involved in this could be dangerous." But I had already decided. There was no going back. Rose had a nephew who worked in private investigation. Nothing big, small cases, infidelity, minor fraud. But he knew how to get information, how to follow leads, how to find what others wanted to hide. I asked Rose to put me in touch with him. Paul Torres, that was his name. A man about 40 years old, serious, professional. We met in a coffee shop far from the neighborhood where Robert lived. I didn't want to risk anyone seeing us. I told him everything. About the man, the folder, the envelope, and I also told him about how Rebecca had entered my son's life, how she had distanced him from me, how everything had changed since she appeared. "Mrs. Smith, I understand your situation, but I need you to understand that this can take time, and it can cost money. Investigating isn't cheap." Paul was honest from the start. He told me he would need at least $1,000 to begin, to follow her, to check public records, to see if there was anything shady in her past. $1,000 was almost all the money I had saved. It was my emergency fund, the money I kept in case I got sick, in case I had to move, in case something serious happened. But at that moment, I knew there was nothing more serious than losing my son without a fight, that if I didn't do this, I would regret it for the rest of my life. I gave him the money, all of it, and Paul began his work. He told me he would call me in 2 weeks, not to try to contact Rebecca or Robert in the meantime, to act normal, not to arouse suspicion. They were the 2 longest weeks of my life. Every day I woke up wondering if I had done the right thing, if this wouldn't turn me into the villain of the story, into the meddling mother-in-law who couldn't let her son live his life. But then I remembered Robert's face, how he had changed, how he treated me, and I knew something external was influencing him, that my son hadn't become like that on his own, that someone was behind it, and that someone was Rebecca. Paul's call came on a Thursday afternoon. "Mrs. Smith, we need to talk. I found something." His voice sounded serious, worried even. We agreed to meet that same night at the same coffee shop. When I arrived, Paul was already there. He had a folder on the table, thicker than I expected. It looked full of papers, documents, evidence. My heart was beating so hard I thought it would jump out of my chest. "Mrs. Smith, what I found is serious, very serious." He started without beating around the bush. "Rebecca Miller has been manipulating your son from the beginning, and not just emotionally, financially too." He opened the folder and began to show me documents, contracts, bank statements, printed conversations. Rebecca convinced Robert to put all his savings into investments she supposedly managed. She promised to double his money in 1 year. He trusted her. He gave her everything. More than $100,000 he had saved from years of work. Paul pointed to the papers as he spoke. The numbers, the accounts, all there, black and white. "And what happened to that money?" I asked, though I already feared the answer. I already knew nothing good could come of this. It disappeared. Or rather, she moved it to accounts in her name, to real investments, but ones for which only she is the beneficiary. Robert put up the money, but she's the sole owner. If they divorce tomorrow, he doesn't see a single cent back. Paul moved on to another document. This is the contract he signed. It's written in a way that makes it look like they are both partners. But if you read the fine print, everything stays in her name. I felt the floor move beneath me. My son had been scammed. By the woman who claimed to love him. By the woman he married, and worse still, worse. He had no idea. He trusted her blindly. He had given her everything, and she had taken it without remorse. "There's more," Paul continued. "I found messages between Rebecca and her mother, from before the wedding, talking about how Robert was the perfect candidate. Young, with a good salary, without a family that would interfere much. Those were her words, without a family that would interfere. And then there are more recent messages where she talks about you, Mrs. Smith." "What do they say?" My voice came out as a whisper. I was shaking. My whole body was trembling. Paul showed me the screenshots, WhatsApp conversations between Rebecca and her mother, between Rebecca and her friends, all talking about me, about the old lady, about the mother-in-law who doesn't know her place, about how she needed to distance Robert from me because I was an obstacle to her plans. "I almost have him where I want him. I just need him to finish cutting ties with his mother. He's too dependent on her, but I'm working on it. Little by little, I'm convincing him that she's toxic, that she manipulates him, that he needs to distance himself to be happy." That message was from 6 months ago. 6 months in which Rebecca had systematically poisoned my son against me. Another message said, "The old lady came today without calling first. I had to invent that Robert was busy. She can't keep showing up like this. I need him to set clearer boundaries with her. Maybe if I orchestrate a situation where she looks bad in front of everyone, he'll finally understand that he has to choose, either her or me, and obviously, he's going to choose me." Tears ran down my face uncontrollably. I read message after message, seeing how this woman had planned every step, every humiliation, every moment of pain. Everything had been calculated. Everything had been part of a plan to destroy my relationship with my son and take his money. I also found this. Paul took out more papers. "Rebecca has debts, lots of debts. Her family isn't as rich as they pretend. The father has been bankrupt for 3 years. He lost his business. The house they live in is mortgaged to the hilt. All the money they have is borrowed. Pretense. Pure smoke." And Rebecca needed to marry someone who could maintain that lifestyle, someone who had money. Or who could get it. And she found Robert. He showed me bank statements from the Miller family. Debts with banks, with lenders, with credit cards. hundreds of thousands of dollars. And meanwhile, they continued to pretend. They continued to live in their big house. They continued to buy expensive clothes. They continued to travel, all with money they didn't have, all with loans they couldn't repay. And now Rebecca was doing the same thing with my son's money, spending it, investing it in her name, making sure that when everything collapsed, she would be protected and Robert would be left with nothing. "Does Robert know anything about this?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Paul shook his head. "He has no idea. She shows him fake bank statements. She tells him the investments are doing well, that they are making money. But the truth is that every month she takes money out of those accounts to pay her family's debts, to maintain the illusion of wealth, and Robert works harder and harder, thinking he is building a future, without knowing that future is being stolen every day." I closed my eyes. I tried to breathe. I tried to process everything I had just discovered. My son was being manipulated, scammed, deliberately distanced from me, and all for money, for damn money and pretense. What do I do with this, Paul? How do I tell my son that the woman he loves is a liar? How do I show him this without him thinking I'm making things up because I don't like his wife? That's the problem, Mrs. Smith. Rebecca has done a perfect job. She has planted in Robert's mind that you are the problem, that you are controlling, jealous, manipulative. So if you show up with this evidence, there's a high possibility that he won't believe you, that he'll think you paid to fabricate evidence, that you're so desperate to separate him from Rebecca that you're capable of lying. I spent days looking at those documents. I read them over and over again as if they were going to change, as if I were going to discover that it was all a mistake, that Paul was wrong, that Rebecca wasn't really a manipulator who had planned everything from the beginning. But no, the papers continued to say the same thing. The truth continued to be the same, raw, painful, undeniable. I put everything in a shoebox at the back of my closet. I couldn't leave them in plain sight. Every time I saw them, my stomach hurt. I wanted to call Robert and scream the truth at him, to go to their house and throw the documents in his face, to force him to see what I saw. But I knew I couldn't do it that way. Rebecca had done her job too well. She had made me the enemy, the toxic mother to be distrusted. Rose came to visit me often during those days. She brought me food because I didn't feel like cooking. She sat with me in silence when I didn't want to talk. And when I finally spoke, she just listened. She didn't judge. She didn't tell me what to do. She was just there, and that was more than my own son was doing for me. "You have to be smart, Mary. You have to think carefully about how to use this, because you're only going to get one chance. If you do it wrong, Robert will never believe you, and you'll lose him forever." Rose's words echoed in my head all the time. She was right. I couldn't make a mistake. I couldn't let my emotions dominate me. I had to be cold, calculating, like Rebecca. I started observing, paying attention to every detail. Every time Robert mentioned something about his life, I wrote it down. Dates, names, places, financial decisions Rebecca had suggested, trips they had taken, big purchases, everything. I was building a map, a timeline that would show the pattern, the systematic way Rebecca had taken control. I also started saving every message Robert sent me, every conversation where he repeated things that Rebecca had clearly told him. "Mom, you need to understand that you can't come whenever you want." "Mom, Rebecca feels uncomfortable when you criticize her decisions." "Mom, you have to respect that I have my own family now." Words that didn't sound like my son's, words that had Rebecca's poison hidden behind them. Paul called me 2 weeks later. "I have more information. Rebecca is planning something." We agreed to meet again, this time in a park, more discreet, less chance of someone seeing us together. Rebecca is going to ask Robert to buy a new house, bigger, more expensive. She's already found one. It's worth $800,000. She's going to tell him it's an investment, that the value will go up, that it's the perfect time. Paul showed me an email she had sent to a real estate agent, dated 2 days ago. "My husband has good credit and excellent income. We are ready to make an offer." "Robert doesn't have $800,000. He barely had enough to buy the apartment I live in now," I said, confused, not understanding how Rebecca planned to do this. I know, but she's going to convince him to take out a huge loan, to use all the credit he has, and when they have that house, she's going to make sure they put it in both their names, but with a special clause. If they divorce, the house goes to her. Because she's going to argue that her family put down the down payment, which is a lie, but she's going to forge documents to prove it. Paul knew things that scared me, things that made me wonder how deep Rebecca's plan went. That's fraud. That's illegal. My voice trembled, not with fear, but with rage, with powerlessness, seeing how this woman was destroying my son and I couldn't do anything to stop her. It is, but it's very difficult to prove if Robert signs voluntarily, if he accepts everything without reading, without questioning, which is exactly what Rebecca has been training him to do these 3 years. Trust her blindly, not to doubt, not to ask for second opinions, just sign where she tells him. Paul put the papers away. Mrs. Smith, if you're going to do something, it has to be soon, before he signs for that house, because if he does, he'll be financially tied to Rebecca for decades, and getting out of that will be almost impossible. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my bed with the box of documents in my lap, thinking, planning, trying to find the perfect way to reveal the truth. It had to be in public. It had to be in front of witnesses. It had to be at a moment where Rebecca couldn't escape, where she couldn't flip the story, where she couldn't play the victim. And then I remembered. The dinner where I had to apologize, where Robert had invited his rich friends, Rebecca's associates, the people who mattered in their new world of pretense. That was my chance. That was the perfect moment. I called Paul. I need you to come to that dinner. I need you to be a witness. And I need you to bring everything, every document, every piece of evidence, every message, everything. I explained my plan. He listened in silence. When I finished, there was a long pause. Mrs. Smith, this is going to be brutal. It's going to destroy Rebecca. But it's also going to destroy the image Robert has of his life, of his marriage, of everything. Are you sure you want to do this? His voice sounded worried, as if he were warning me of the consequences, as if there was no turning back after this. I'm sure. My son deserves to know the truth. He deserves to know that the woman he married is using him. She's robbing him. And she's deliberately pushing him away from his mother. If, after knowing all this, he still decides to stay with her, at least it will be his decision. An informed decision, not based on lies. My voice came out firm, firmer than I had felt in months. All right, I'll be there. Paul agreed. And then I knew there was no turning back, that at that dinner, everything was going to change, for better or for worse. But it was going to change, and I was going to be the one to cause it. The days leading up to the dinner I spent preparing, rehearsing in my head what I was going to say, how I was going to say it. It had to be perfect. It had to be clear, direct, without emotions that would betray me, without tears that would make me look weak, without rage that would make me look like the bitter mother-in-law. Just facts, just the truth, just justice. I tried on 3 different dresses. I wanted to look dignified, respectable. I didn't want anyone to be able to say I was the poor mother who was jealous of her son's life. I chose a gray dress, simple but elegant. I did my hair. I put on light makeup. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a different woman. A woman who was no longer going to beg. A woman who was no longer going to humiliate herself. A woman who was going to fight. Rose came to see me the night before the dinner. "Are you ready?" she asked. I nodded. "I'm ready. For the first time in a long time, I'm ready." She hugged me, so tight I could barely breathe. "Be careful, Mary. Whatever happens tomorrow, be careful, and don't regret it. Whatever you do, don't regret it." I won't regret it. I've spent too much time regretting not having acted sooner, for having let Rebecca do whatever she wanted, for having accepted the crumbs of attention Robert gave me. No more. Tomorrow, everything ends. I either get my son back, or I lose him forever. But at least I'm going to fight. Robert's call came on a Wednesday morning. "Mom, Rebecca and I are having a dinner on Saturday. We want you to come." His voice sounded strangely formal, as if he were reading a script, as if someone had told him exactly what to say. "Of course, my love. What time do you want me to arrive?" I kept my voice calm. Sweet. the voice of the obedient mother they expected, the mother who was going to apologize, the mother who had finally learned her place. At 8. And Mom, I need you to know that there will be guests, friends of ours, important people. Rebecca wants everything to be perfect. He paused, waiting for my reaction, waiting for me to protest, to say I didn't want to apologize in front of strangers. But I didn't say anything. I just waited for him to continue. And we need you to apologize to Rebecca, in front of everyone, for how you've treated her, for making her feel uncomfortable, for not respecting our space. She deserves that apology, Mom, and I deserve it too. There it was, the confirmation, the exact plan, to humiliate me in front of their social circle, to put me in my place, to demonstrate who had the power in that family. It's fine, Robert. I'll go, and I'll talk to Rebecca in front of everyone. I promise you. I didn't lie. I was going to talk to Rebecca in front of everyone, only it wasn't going to be the conversation they expected. It wasn't going to be the humiliating apology they had planned. It was going to be something completely different. Thank you, Mom. I know this is difficult for you, but it's necessary. We have to move forward as a family. And that can only happen if you accept your mistake. His voice sounded relieved, satisfied. He thought he had won, that he had finally broken me, that I had accepted my defeat. He hung up, and I stared at the phone, feeling that strange mixture of sadness and determination. Sadness because my son truly believed I was the problem. Determination because in 3 days I was going to show him who the problem had been all this time. I called Paul immediately. It's Saturday, at 8. I need you to arrive at 8:30, when everyone is already there, when they can no longer cancel or escape. I gave him the address. I repeated the plan. He confirmed he would be there. With everything. With every piece of evidence. With every document. With every message. The following days were strange. I was calm. Too calm. Rose told me I looked like a different person, that I had a peace that was scary, and she was right, because I had already made the decision. I already knew what I was going to do. There were no more doubts. There was no more fear. Only clarity. Only purpose. Saturday arrived. I woke up early, even though the dinner was at night. I showered. I got ready calmly. I put on the gray dress. I did my makeup. I looked in the mirror, and for the first time in months, I recognized myself. I wasn't the broken woman I had been. I wasn't the pleading mother begging for attention. I was Mary Smith, the woman who raised a son alone, the woman who worked until exhaustion, the woman who deserved respect, and who was going to demand it. I took a taxi to Robert's house. I arrived exactly at 8 o'clock. I rang the doorbell. My heart was pounding, but my hands weren't shaking. I was ready. More ready than I had ever been for anything in my life. Rebecca opened the door. She was wearing a black dress that probably cost $1,000, sparkling jewelry, perfect makeup, fake smile. Mary, I'm so glad you came. Her voice dripped with venomous sweetness, that sweetness she uses when there are witnesses, when she has to pretend to be the perfect daughter-in-law. I walked in. The house was full of people, elegant couples, well-dressed, with wine glasses in their hands, talking in small groups. The smell of expensive food filled the air. Everything was perfect. Everything was designed to impress, to show success, to scream, "Look at everything we have." Robert approached. He gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. "Mom, thanks for coming." "Come, I want to introduce you to some friends." He took me from group to group, introducing me as his mother, but without pride, without affection, just as a social obligation. "This is my mother. This is Mary." Empty words, without meaning, without love. I smiled. I greeted people. I accepted the wine glasses they offered me, even though I didn't drink. I just held them. I just played the part that was expected of me. The grateful mother for being included. The mother who was going to apologize. The mother who had finally learned. At 8:20, Rebecca tapped her glass with a knife. The sound caught everyone's attention. The conversation stopped. All faces turned toward her. She smiled. That triumphant smile. That smile that said, "Now comes the good part. Now comes the public humiliation." Friends, thank you for being here tonight. Robert and I wanted to share this special dinner with you, and we also wanted you to witness something important." She looked toward me. Her eyes sparkled with barely contained malice. "Mary, Robert's mother, has something to tell us. Something she needs to say in front of all of you." Everyone looked at me, expectant, curious, some with pity, others with discomfort. No one knew exactly what to expect, but everyone knew it was going to be awkward. I stood up. I placed the glass on the table. I walked to the center of the room, right in front of Rebecca and Robert. "You're right, Rebecca. I have something to say, and I need everyone to listen." My voice came out clear, firm, without a tremor. I looked at my son. I looked at that woman who had destroyed our relationship, and then I smiled. A small smile, calm, the smile of someone who knows she holds all the winning cards. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Paul had arrived. Exactly on time, as we had planned. Rebecca frowned. She wasn't expecting any more guests. Robert, confused, went to open the door. When he saw Paul with his briefcase, his face showed surprise. "This is Paul Torres. He came with me. He's part of what I need to tell you," I said before Robert could ask. Paul came in. He gave a short nod. He stood by my side, like an ally, like a witness, like living proof that what I was about to say wasn't a product of my imagination or my desperation. It was real. It was verifiable. It was undeniable. "Rebecca, you asked me to apologize to you, to admit that I've been a bad mother-in-law, that I've interfered, that I've made you feel uncomfortable." I paused. I let the silence hang. I let everyone pay attention. "And you're right. I owe an apology. But not for what you think." Her face changed. The smile disappeared. Something new appeared in her eyes. Concern. Fear, maybe. As if she suddenly realized that this wasn't going according to her plan, that I wasn't the submissive mother she expected, that something had changed. "I owe an apology for taking so long to discover who you really are, for having let you manipulate my son for 3 years, for not having acted sooner. But that ends today. Today, everyone is going to know the truth about you, Rebecca Miller, about your family, about your intentions, about everything you've been hiding behind that false smile and that borrowed luxury." The silence in the room was absolute. No one was breathing. No one moved. Everyone was watching. Robert took a step toward me. "Mom, what are you doing?" His voice sounded alarmed, angry, but also confused, as if he didn't know whether he should stop me or listen. "I'm saving my son. That's what I'm doing." I looked at Paul. He opened his briefcase. He took out the first folder, the first piece of evidence, the first of many documents that were going to destroy the perfect world Rebecca had built on lies. And we began. Paul placed the first folder on the dining room table. All the guests approached, curious, uncomfortable, unable to look away from what was about to be revealed. Rebecca remained still, too still, like an animal that knows it's trapped but is still looking for an escape. "Robert, 2 years ago, your wife convinced you to invest all your savings in a fund she supposedly managed. $120,000, your money, the money you earned from your work." I started talking. My voice was firm, every word measured, every sentence a direct thrust to the heart of the lie. "Mom, what are you talking about?" Robert tried to interrupt. His face showed confusion, annoyance, but also a flash of fear, as if a part of him already knew that what was coming wasn't going to please him. "Let me finish. Paul, show them the documents." Paul opened the folder. He took out the contracts, the bank statements, the papers that showed every movement of that money. "Here is the contract you signed, Robert. It says that you and Rebecca are partners, that you both own the investment. But if you read this clause here, in fine print, you'll see that in case of divorce, all the assets remain in her name. Only hers." Robert took the papers. His hands were shaking. He read, he reread. His face changed with every line, from confusion to disbelief, from disbelief to understanding, from understanding to horror. "Rebecca, this is true. Why is this clause here?" His voice sounded broken, as if every word hurt him. Honey, it's just a legal technicality. My lawyer told me it was necessary to protect the investment. Rebecca tried to sound calm, but her voice was trembling. Her hands moved nervously. She tried to touch Robert, but he pulled away. A small movement, but definitive. Protect the investment. Or protect yourself, I continued. Because that money was never in any real investment, Robert. Look at these bank statements. Paul showed more papers. Your money was transferred to Rebecca's personal accounts, and from there it was used to pay debts, her family's debts. The guests were murmuring now, glances crossed. Some took out their phones, recording probably, or taking photos. The scandal was unfolding in front of them, and everyone wanted their piece of gossip to tell later. That's a lie. That's completely false. Rebecca raised her voice. Her face had turned red. She was no longer the elegant hostess. She was a cornered woman, desperate. Robert, she's making all this up. She's jealous. She's always been jealous of what we have. Jealous. I repeated the word with bitterness. Yes, Rebecca, I'm jealous. Jealous of how you robbed my son, of how you manipulated him, of how you systematically pushed him away from me. Paul, show them the messages. Paul took out more papers. Screenshots of conversations. Conversations between Rebecca and her mother, between Rebecca and her friends. Conversations where she planned every step, where she talked about me as an obstacle, where she mocked Robert for trusting her, where she calculated how much money she could get from him before he realized. Robert read the messages in silence. His face lost color with every line. I almost have him where I want him. The old lady is a problem, but I'm slowly pushing him away from her. It's easier than I thought. I just have to cry a little, and he does what I want. Those were Rebecca's words, her own words, impossible to deny. Rebecca, you wrote this. Robert showed her the phone. His voice was barely a whisper full of pain, of betrayal, of a world collapsing. You really wrote this about me, about my mother. Rebecca didn't answer. She just stared at the papers, looking for a way out, looking for an explanation. But there was none. The evidence was irrefutable. The messages were clear. Everything was there, black and white, undeniable truth. And there's more. I continued without pity. Rebecca told everyone her family is rich, that they have properties, successful businesses. But the truth is they're bankrupt. The father lost everything 3 years ago. The house they live in is mortgaged. They have debts with 4 different banks, more than $500,000 in debt. And your money, Robert. Your money has been paying those debts, maintaining the illusion of wealth, sustaining a lie. Paul showed the Miller family's bank documents, overdue mortgages, unpaid loans, credit cards maxed out. All the money they pretended to have was smoke, debt disguised as success. And now everyone in that room knew it. All the elegant friends, all the business associates, everyone who had believed the facade. One of the guests spoke, Claire Davis, a businesswoman who knew Rebecca from some social club. So the trips to Europe, the jewelry, it was all with Robert's money? Her voice sounded indignant, deceived, because she had probably also believed that Rebecca was on her same social level, that she belonged to that circle of wealth, and now she discovered it was all a lie. Rebecca tried one last time. Robert, please let me explain. Yes, I made mistakes, but I did it for us, for our future. Your mother is twisting everything. She's making it look worse than it is. Her eyes filled with tears, real tears this time, not from manipulation, from desperation, seeing everything collapse. But Robert no longer looked at her with love. He looked at her with disgust, with betrayal, with the pain of someone who discovers that everything he believed was a lie. You used me. You used me from the beginning. You pushed me away from my mother. You made me believe she was the problem, when you were the problem. His voice rose in volume, rage mixed with pain. You needed my money. That's all you needed. And I was so stupid that I gave you everything. He turned toward me. His eyes were full of tears. Mom, I didn't know. I had no idea. I thought you were jealous. I thought you couldn't accept that I had grown up. But it was her. All this time it was her. His voice broke. My son, my boy, crying in front of everyone, destroyed. I wanted to hug him, but I stopped myself. Not yet. First, I had to finish what I had started. First, I had to make sure Rebecca could never hurt him again. Robert, she was going to make you sign an $800,000 mortgage next week for a house that would have ended up in her name, with false documents saying her family put down the down payment. You were going to be in debt for 30 years for a house that would never be yours. Paul showed the emails, the real estate documents, the complete plan, detailed, ready to be executed. All that was missing was Robert's signature. All that was missing was one more week of deception, one more week of lies, and my son would have been financially trapped forever. The guests no longer pretended not to notice. They talked amongst themselves. They pointed at Rebecca. Some left. Others took out their phones. By tomorrow, the whole city would know what had happened that night. Rebecca Miller would be socially destroyed. No one in that circle would ever trust her again. No one would ever receive her again. Her reputation was ruined. Rebecca collapsed. She fell onto the sofa, crying. She no longer tried to defend herself. She no longer tried to explain. She just cried, because she knew she had lost, that everything she had worked for, everything she had built on lies, had come crashing down in one night, at one dinner, with a mother-in-law she had underestimated. Robert walked toward me. He took my hands. "Mom, forgive me. Please forgive me. I was an idiot, blind. I treated you so badly. I pushed you away. I made you feel like you didn't matter. And all because I believed her lies." His words came out broken, between sobs. My son was crying, and I finally let the tears fall too. I hugged him, tight, the way I hadn't hugged him in 3 years, the way I used to hug him when he was a child and the world hurt him, and I was his refuge, his protection, his home. "It's all right, my love. It's all right. It's over. It's all over," I whispered against his head, and I felt him cling to me, as if I were the only solid thing in a world that had turned to liquid. The days that followed that dinner were strange. Robert showed up at my apartment the next day, early, with swollen eyes from crying so much, with an expression I hadn't seen on him in years, pure vulnerability. He sat on my old sofa, and for hours he didn't say anything. He just stayed there, like when he was a child and came to seek comfort after a difficult day. I didn't try to fill the silence with words. I didn't say "I told you so." I didn't blame him for the 3 years of pain. I just was there, present, as I had always been, as I always would be, because that's what mothers do. They receive their children when the world breaks them, without judgment, without reproach, only with open arms. "Mom, how could I have been so blind?" He finally spoke. His voice sounded broken, ashamed. "How did I not see what she was? How did I let her treat you like that? Let me treat you like that?" He covered his face with his hands and cried again, tears of a man who discovers he built his life on lies. I sat next to him. I took his hand, the same hand I held when he took his first steps, the same hand I bandaged when he fell off his bike, the same hand that now trembled with pain and regret. "She's very good at manipulating, Robert. She chose you because she knew you were honorable, that you were trusting, that you loved with everything you had. It's not your fault for having believed someone who claimed to love you. But it is my fault for having pushed you away, for having treated you as if you didn't matter, for having made you feel like you were a problem." He looked at me with those eyes that so resembled mine, the eyes he inherited from me. "Mom, I'm never going to be able to apologize enough. I'm never going to be able to repair those 3 years." "I don't need you to repair anything. I just need you to never forget where you came from, who was there when you had nothing, who loved you even when you stopped loving me." My voice was soft, without resentment, because resentment doesn't build bridges, and I needed to get my son back, not punish him. Robert moved back to a small apartment. He left the house he shared with Rebecca. He started divorce proceedings. Paul helped him with the legal documents, with the lawsuits to recover at least part of the stolen money. It would be a long process, painful, but necessary. Rebecca tried to call him several times. She sent him long messages. letters, begging for another chance, promising she would change, that everything had been a misunderstanding. But Robert didn't answer. He had learned his lesson. He had seen the truth. And there was no turning back. The Miller family tried to threaten him with lawsuits, with public scandals. But Paul had everything documented, every lie, every fraud, every manipulation. And they knew it. They knew that if they took this to court, they would lose more than they had already lost. So they stayed quiet, humiliated, socially destroyed. Sundays were ours again. Robert came to my apartment every week. We ate together, we talked, we laughed sometimes, we cried other times, rebuilding what Rebecca had destroyed. Brick by brick, conversation by conversation, hug by hug. One Sunday, 2 months after that dinner, Robert arrived with a box. "Mom, I found this stored in the garage at the house. Rebecca had hidden them." He opened the box. They were the photographs. All the photographs of our life together. The ones that had disappeared from his house. The ones Rebecca had erased. There they were. Robert as a baby. Robert at his confirmation. Robert graduating. The two of us smiling at every stage of his life. "I'm going to frame them. I'm going to put them up in my new apartment, because I'm never again going to forget who was there, who loved me when I had nothing, who sacrificed everything so I could have a better life." He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "Forgive me, Mom. Please, forgive me." "I already forgave you, my love. The day you were born, I forgave you for everything you could ever do to me in this life." I hugged him, and I felt that we had finally come back, that my son had returned to me, not the child he was, but the man he should always have been, a man who knew the value of loyalty, of true love, of family. Months later, I ran into Rose at the market. She hugged me tight. "Mary, you look different. You look at peace." And she was right. I was at peace, because I no longer carried the weight of injustice. I no longer lived wondering what I had done wrong. I no longer felt invisible. I had recovered my dignity, not by begging, not by pleading, but by defending myself, showing the truth, refusing to be the silent victim everyone expected me to be. And in doing so, I not only saved myself, I saved my son. Robert now calls me 3 times a week. He visits me every Sunday. He includes me in his life, no longer as an obligation, but as a choice, as someone who wants to be there, who values my presence, who understands what he lost during those 3 dark years. Sometimes he asks me how I could forgive him so easily, how I could take him back without reproach, without making him pay for the pain he caused. And I tell him the truth. Because a mother's love is not a conditional love. It's not a love that keeps score. It's a love that forgives, that waits, that never gives up. But I also tell him that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, that the scars are still there, invisible but real, and that he will have to live with the knowledge that he hurt the person who loved him the most. That is his burden. That is his lesson. And it's a lesson he needed to learn. One afternoon, while we were having coffee in my living room, Robert told me something I will never forget. "Mom, thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for fighting, because if you hadn't, I would have lost everything. My money, my dignity, and worst of all, I would have lost you. And that would have been the most terrible thing." I smiled. A calm smile, serene, the smile of someone who fought and won. Not with shouts, not with violence, but with truth, with dignity, with the silent strength that only mothers know. "I was never going to give up on you, my love, never, because you are my life, my purpose, my reason for going on." Today, I am 67 years old. I live in the same small apartment. I wear the same simple clothes. I eat the same simple food. I don't have luxuries. I don't have wealth. But I have my son. I have his love. I have his respect. I have his presence. And that is worth more than all the diamonds and big houses in the world. Rebecca left town. I heard she moved back in with her parents, that no one in her social circle ever spoke to her again, that her reputation was destroyed forever. I don't feel pleasure in her downfall. But I don't feel pity either. She chose her path. She chose lies, manipulation, deception. and choices have consequences. I learned something from all this. I learned that silence is not always peace, that enduring is not always love, that sometimes you have to fight, you have to defend yourself, you have to say enough, and you have to do it without fear, without guilt, with the certainty that defending your dignity is never wrong. Mothers don't have to accept mistreatment from their children just because we love them. We don't have to disappear to make space for their new lives. We don't have to become ghosts of ourselves. We deserve respect. We deserve love. We deserve to be present. And if that respect doesn't come easily, then you have to claim it. With truth, with evidence, with the firmness of someone who knows they are right. Because in the end, the truth always wins. Always. It may take time, it may hurt, it may cost tears and sleepless nights, but it always, always wins. Today, I look out the window of my apartment. I see the sun setting over the city, and I smile. Because I survived. Because I fought. Because I recovered what was mine. My son, my dignity, my peace, and no one, ever again, is going to take it away from me. That, I promise. To myself, to all the mothers who stay silent when they should scream, to all the women who disappear when they should shine. Luxury is destroyed, facades fall, sods. Money runs out, but true love, the one that asks for nothing in return, the one that forgives but does not forget, the one that fights when necessary, that love remains, and I am living proof of it.